Hello, I'm Lee Sanders. Probably like you, I'm currently sheltered in place and learning to best live the COVID-19 experience. Although my daily routines continue to change, I still talk with lots of people who love high school sports. We wanted to share some of these conversations in order to build community, focus on high school sports topics of interest to officials and others, connect our coaches and officials, and chat with talented Louisianians who are passionate supporters of our officiating community. Thanks for listening to The Right Call. We hope you enjoy today's discussion.
We're here with Assistant Executive Director Lee Sanders, in charge of officials for the LHSAA, myself, Eric Held, Director of the Louisiana High School Coaches Association, and Dwain Jenkins, President of the Louisiana Football Coaches Association, also president of the Louisiana High School Coaches Association, and wearing more hats, head football coach and athletic director at Lutcher High School. Dwain, give us a brief intro and a little bio and background on yourself when it comes to your coaching background.
Well, thank y'all for having me. I've just finished my fourth year as the athletic director and head football coach at Lutcher High School. Before that, I spent 3 years previously as the head football coach, athletic director at St. James High. And then the 11 years prior to that as assistant football, offensive coordinator at Lutcher High School. And then also during that time served as an assistant baseball coach, head track coach, and assistant powerlifting coach. So kind of been around a couple of different sports there. Got involved with the LHSAA about 5 years ago as an at-large member when Jay Dykes was the president, and probably about 2 years before that started getting involved right as I became the head football coach at St. James with the LFCA. Was on that executive board 7 years ago, and just kind of the way things kind of happened. Shane Smith, who had been the president of the LFCA for a couple of years, ended up moving into college assistant job at Southeastern. We kind of had some restructuring on the board, and I became president of that organization and have served in that role for about 5 years now. I do wear a lot of hats, a lot of different things going on, keeps me busy, but enjoy getting to represent the coaches of the state of Louisiana in my roles with the LHSCA and the LFCA.
Thanks, Dwain. And just from having the opportunity to be on the LFCA board the last few years and then moving into this role, Dwain does a tremendous job as far as leadership's concerned with the Football Coaches Association, the High School Coaches Association, and, of course, in his roles at Lutcher and then previously at St. James. And just bringing you into the conversation, talking about instant replay. Instituted it for the first time, using it in the state championship game. The survey that was sent out to our coaches, I believe it was 87%, said that they would like to have it in the state championship games. From a coach's standpoint and the president of the Coaches Association, a little bit of your thoughts and your perspective on instant replay.
Well, I just think from a coach's standpoint, the most important thing in that game is just making sure the call's right. And I think we have the technology in place, especially when we're playing it in the Superdome with a facility, the camera angles and everything else that's there, that we ought to use that technology and make sure that we get the calls right. And I think that's what you saw overwhelmingly from the coaching profession, is just that commitment to whatever it takes to get the calls right in that big situation. It's probably the most important thing, even if it costs us a minute, 2 minutes in a game, a pause. The most important thing is just get the call right. And having had the opportunity to play in the Superdome a couple of times before this replay was enacted, sometimes it's tough when you see that replay on a big screen and you know that call maybe should have gone another way, but there was no way for the officials to use that video, the technology that they had to overturn the call and get the call right. And what we were able to do last year by instituting that instant replay gave the officials the technology and the tools that are available to them to make sure that at the end of the day, they're making the right call.
And I think that's one thing you touched on. The common theme among the coaches when we talked to them was about getting the call right. And we have the technology to help get it right, to help the officials on the field. They make mistakes just like coaches do during the game, but hey, let's get it right. A couple of the concerns that they had that I talked to coaches just from a perspective going in, even though overwhelming majority said they wanted to have instant replay in the championship games and discuss these concerns, disrupting the flow of the game, lengthening the game, and then high school officials, the vast majority of them being on the field for the first time while instant replay is being used. So just discuss some of those concerns. What are your thoughts about those things?
I understand that sometimes they can feel like the flow of the game could be broken up, but I've also been in many games without instant replay being used when there was a tough call or big ruling that had to be made, where you saw games delayed while officials got together to try to make sure that they understood and interpreted the rule correctly. And many times that game would get disrupted while the referees went over to explain to each side on the coaching staff what was going on and what the rule was and what was the decision. So I just see that as a further extension of that piece of it. And if coaches are truly committed to making sure that the call is right, a delay of 1 or 2 minutes in that game shouldn't make that big of a difference. There's already disruptions at times during games, especially when there's a controversial call or maybe a ruling that isn't as well known has to be disseminated between both teams, that you get those breaks in high school games today. Obviously, there's going to be some growing pains the first time you do anything. And officials were put into that situation where they were going to use instant replay for the first time on a field. And there was going to be some learning there. But I don't think that guys on the field go into it intentionally not trying to make the right call on the field. But we see it every Saturday and Sunday in the colleges and the pros at the speed of the game. Sometimes there's things that the cameras can catch that an official might not be in a position to be able to catch it, or might not have the proper angle that a camera can catch. And it just gives them the opportunity to make sure that call is correct. So I think it's just a learning process for everybody involved. But I do think that the way that the officials handled it this past year for the first time that we did it in the Superdome was pretty remarkable, both with the guys that were in the booth and the guys on the field.
Great perspective there. Lee, anything to add or ask Dwain from an official standpoint?
No, but I do want to echo for a second some things that Dwain said that I think are really important that, I agree with. And that is the most important thing is to get the call right. Coaches, officials, spectators, all of us share that goal. So that's what unites us.
Sure. And just from a coaching perspective, being in it for so long and then getting an opportunity to go up in the booth and see how that operation took place and the constant communication from the booth to the field, all the officials plugged in upstairs to the booth to the replay officials, and to see the work that went in, it's amazing because we sit at home a lot of times and watch college and pro games and don't realize everything that goes into it. Dwain, getting back to you, any suggestions for improvement or any additions to replay that you think you'd like to see or that coaches would like to see?
I just think as it goes forward, I think those coaches that get that opportunity to play for that state championship and having that, I guess that in the back of their minds, that assurance that these calls are going to be right. I just think that goes a long way. And obviously with anything, the officials will improve with that process. And the only thing that I thought at times in the state championship games and that they got a little time was sometimes the crowd didn't understand that it was under review. So maybe just from a communication standpoint, understanding that review process, what it's going to be, and maybe it was kind of caught some of the fans in the stadium off guard that instant replay was actually in place. So even an announcement before the game, letting everybody know that, look, state championship games, we're going to have instant replay. That way, when that first break happens, the fans aren't wondering what's going on or why is that it's breaking this game, or we didn't know they had instant replay in a high school game. But I think that part, as we continue to use it, will continue to improve. And I think coaches, for the most part, will continue to be excited about it. I know it's pretty much a impossible feat for Lee and for the officials to make every coach happy, because even if the video clearly shows, if it goes against you and it costs you in a big game, you'll be upset about it no matter what.
I'll say this, and Eric, you might want to speak to that, but the overwhelming, if not all, of the coaches who participated in the games, the Dome, support the use of it again and did give some feedback. And a lot of it, is what you're saying there about improved communication, better support for the guys on the field, and a reduction in the amount of time it takes to make a ruling.
Yeah, and I think all of those things will happen the more we use it. I think what we did this year was outstanding for the sport and for making sure that the officiating is done at the highest level, using all of different technology that we have in place to make sure that it's right. And I just think that it's something that was a great addition for the state of Louisiana and something that will continue to improve. And we know that our product on the field, Louisiana football, high school football, is as good as anywhere in the country. And we deserve to have the advances in technology to make sure.
Yep, I agree. Absolutely. These specific plays, Dwain, are you familiar with any of them? Like
the one I think I remember the most was the one in the Destran Acadiana game.
Yep. The scoring play?
The scoring play. Of all the ones, I don't know if it took, I would have to look at the data to see how long that actually took. I just think because of the magnitude of that call, it may have felt like it was longer than it would.
I think it's a little bit of both there. That was one of our longest. I'm looking at the number now, but that one went north of the average. They're having to put together multiple angles.
Right.
And Eric, you've watched that several times. Would you say with 100% certainty that the call made ultimately through the process and the people and the protocol was correct?
Correct. It was correct call based on putting it together through the different angles. They checked all the different angles that they had to their disposal to make sure that they got it right, and they got it right in the end. And that's one. So it was 100% correct. Although, like you said, we were on the field at that time, and it felt like an eternity. In fact, it might have been 3 minutes.
Right. And for the magnitude of that play, for 3 minutes to make sure that it was 100% accurate, I don't think as a coach you can ask for anything else. If you're talking about the difference in a football game and winning a state championship or not, you want to make sure that call is correct. And
let's think of the context of that play too, guys.
Right.
The score, the down and distance, where we were in that game.
Right, and that's what an extra minute here to make sure that call is 100% accurate. Yeah, I think is invaluable.
Yeah, no question about that. And again, going back to the common theme, getting it right. If you're going to spend 3 extra minutes to make sure that it's 100% right, well, it's definitely worth the 180 seconds. When you're thinking about the time that goes in, that's invested, it may seem like an eternity, but that's the reason why we got instant replay instituted in the state championship game, to get it right in the game of the biggest magnitude of the year.
And no doubt. And I can tell you that 3 minutes on the floor of the Superdome with a championship in balance lasts an eternity, whether the clock's running or not, just from personal experience, trying to run out the clock and manage timeouts at the end of the game and worry about other people and how many first downs you got to get. It feels like a long time, even though to everybody else, it's 180 seconds. It just feels a whole lot longer in that moment, at that magnitude. And it's that way for the officials and everybody else. But like you said, to get it right, in the magnitude of the call is the most important piece.
What do y'all think the stoppage was? Give me a guess. Held's really good at this, Dwain, but I'm pulling for you. You're going to beat him. And Held won't live with himself.
On that one play?
Wait a minute. I think we should make Held guess first too, right, Dwain?
Yeah, I think so.
Just on this one play, the 4th down play, Held. Don't look anything up.
Why would I try and look something up?
Because I know you. You're trying to win.
Because you love to be right.
Coach. You're competitive.
No, I said 3 minutes, but I know it was less. It felt like 3 minutes. I would say 2:40.
Held's going 2:40.
Dwayne's going to win this one, Held. What you think, Dwain?
Let's go. 2:28.
We were in the broadcast booth for that when it felt like eternity, but it was only a minute 40, minute 45. I'll hedge my bet, go a minute 45.
Wow. On the floor, just felt I was right there by the replay officials talking with the booth upstairs, and it felt like forever.
2 minutes and 53 seconds, guys. 2:53
on
the 4th and 1 play. Now, shortly thereafter, that was on the 4th and 1. At 7:16 in the 4th, there was a challenge on a spot where we had some dead ball action in the end zone with a helmet.
Well, and at the end of the day, they got the calls right, so the time is, to me, pretty irrelevant. So, Held, you won again.
I didn't have access to any stats. I know you were upstairs watching the game, and we communicated a few times on a few of the plays. I think the Carr Easton game, the spot in that, I remember we texted back and forth about that, but that felt like forever as well. But
that was a long one there as well. That was the longest one of all, guys. That was north of 3 minutes.
Well, I think a again.
And that was a tough call, very complex.
Well, and that's the thing. You're talking about context of the game, 4th and 1, a critical first down, what the spot's going to be. If they were going off of what they saw on the field, they might not have got it right.
Right.
And that gave them the opportunity to get the call right. And the worst thing would have been sitting back and being able to review the game the next day on film and knowing that call was inaccurate and it meant the difference in somebody winning or losing a state championship. So the trade-off for me is, like I've said and reiterated a few times, is that trade-off is worth that 2 to 3 minutes. That's extending the game.
Well, any closing comments, Lee, from an officiating standpoint before we finish up with Dwain?
No, I just echo what Dwain said. The goal of all of us and the way we should frame our professional conversations is the goal is to get it right. Officials, coaches, spectators share that. I think this tool demonstrates the changing dynamics of the world we live in. You know, earlier we were talking about the length of a play or, a review, and sometimes I don't even know what day of the week it is now, right, guys?
Right.
Especially during this last 2 weeks.
Especially the last 2 weeks. You're right. Well, Dwain, we appreciate you coming on, representing the Football Coaches Association, and also, down in the trenches as a head football coach and athletic director. Appreciate your insight and input and for what you do as the president of the Football Coaches Association.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Eric, for your work with the Coaches Association over the last year. And I really like to extend some true appreciation for Lee and the job that he's done with the officials since he's taken over in the communication and how well he's communicated back and forth with coaches. That's been one of the things that you hear the most is coaches are very complimentary of the professionalism that comes from that office as far as dealing with the officials on a weekly and daily basis. And I think, like Lee said, he framed it, the professionalism and the professional conversations that we have, and as everybody's there with the best interest of doing what's best for the game and our state and our sport and our kids. And I think that the whole idea of getting things right and using whatever tools we need to use to get them right is putting us in the right direction.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Dwain. Appreciate you.
Thank y'all.
I think Eric's dog's excited as well.
That's it.
You know that commercial that they have with the dogs in the kennels and the cages outside? That's going to be him. He's going to be one of those lonely dogs.
I think he just heard you. There was a little whimper out there. He's afraid now.
Yeah, he better be. Thanks, Dwain.
Thanks, Dwain.
Thank y'all. Talk later.
You got it.
Take care.
Stay tuned for more calls from this series on Instant Replay. Thanks for listening.